Hello everyone, welcome back to a new video and welcome to my mid-year reading update. In the beginning of the year I did a 2023 goals video and I talked about reading, writing, Instagram goals, YouTube goals, and today I thought that I could update you on how my goals are going so far. So this is my video that I posted, when did I post this? On January 5th. And so it says 5 months ago. I will say that it's 6 months ago. Setting my goals 2023, writing goals, writing another book, signing events and more. Okay, now we get to the reading goals. My next goal is about reading. Last year I had a goal of reading 45 books and I surpassed that by 12 books. I could set my goal at 60 books if I wanted to be really ambitious. Upping it by 5 books is what I've been doing for the last 2 years. I went from 40 to 45 last year and now from 45 to 50 books. So my next Goodreads goal or my reading goal is 50 books, which is a lot, and considering that I will be studying, hopefully, fingers crossed, I will be studying full-time next fall. Considering that, I am debating if this is a too ambitious goal. With that, I also have a goal of finishing most of my physical TBR. And my physical... Okay, let's just begin with the reading goal of the year. I set it to be 50 books and I have so far on the 9th of June, so almost the midpoint of June, I have read 22 of the 50 books, which is almost halfway. TBR has grown out of proportions. This last year I bought so many new books, didn't read as much from my physical TBR, I read a lot more ebooks and such. That's why I was able to read 58 books, but my physical TBR is way too big. Here I have a list that I'm showing you right now of my physical TBR. Right here that you're seeing right now is the books that I have left from my physical TBR list that I made last December or January. All the other books that you see on this shelf or this list is books that I have bought in the last year, and I counted them. It was 47 books, unread books on my physical TBR, which is so much. So what I want to do is read 50 books or more next year, but I also want to check off some of my books on my physical TBR. Let's just end it there because I have gathered some statistics. I have it on a note right here to talk about the books that I have read, the 22 books. I had a goal of reading more from my physical TBR, and while these 22 books are not all of them from my physical TBR, 10 of them were from my physical TBR. So I have read 22 books total this year and I have 56 books on my TBR. With that said, I have read 10 books from my physical TBR in these 22 books. So I have read 10, I have bought as many as I have read. Can't really say that I have succeeded on this point. I mean, I have read 10 of my physical TBR books, but I could have read more. And out of these 22 books, 5 of them were audiobooks, which is, I think, less than last year. I read a lot more audiobooks, or I listened to a lot more audiobooks last year. 4 of them were ebooks, which also surprised me because I thought that I have read a lot more ebooks in the year so far, and I definitely did read a lot of ebooks last year. And 13 of the 22 books were physical books and 10 of them were my physical TBR. And also a fun thing that I thought that I could mention was that I have borrowed 3 or 4, I can't remember, from the library where I work. But having 56 unread books on my physical TBR is a lot. So of course I want to read more of them in the upcoming months. I have actually made a TBR jar, which is over here, and here is all of the unread books, or the ones that I haven't bought most recently, at least. And I have actually already picked one out and I'm reading it right now. So that goal is not going well, but it's going, you know. I have books on this TBR that I'm currently reading. For example, I am reading a few of those Swedish books right now. I'm listening to them as audiobooks. And I'm also listening to The Iron Wolf, is that what it's called? By Stig Pettersen. It's called Järnulven in Swedish, and it's so bad, so bad. The audiobook is bad, the book is bad. I have 4 hours left on the audiobook and I'm listening to that when I can't sleep, because I fall asleep instantly when I'm listening to that audiobook. Anyway, I know I shouldn't be finishing this book or trying to finish it because it's so bad. I'm one of those people that needs to finish a book. I have it on my physical TBR and I need to finish it. I have actually decided to DNF The Iron Wolf. I have it on my physical TBR. I'm planning on getting rid of it very soon because I didn't like it at all. It's almost like I have grown to despise the book and I will not continue with the series, of course, because I haven't finished the first book. This is not usually the case for me in books, but I can't bring myself to read this book and I want to get rid of it. So that's an update on that book, I guess. Some of the books on that list is books that I have had for a long time. Some of them are books that I could finish in literally a day. I have 3 poetry collections that I could finish all of them in one day, but I can't really bring myself to do it because I don't like poetry collections. I thought that I did that's why I bought them. About the poetry collections, I didn't count them in those 56 books that are on my physical TBR because I plan to get rid of them as well. I wanted to be like all the other booktubers that read poetry and liked it, and I didn't, sadly. So I will be getting rid of those in the upcoming months. And then a book buying goal. I'm not gonna count the books that I'm gonna buy early next year because I got gift cards, but a goal of mine is to try to only buy books that you want to read in the moment. Don't buy sequels that you will want to read sometime in the future, or sequels to books that you haven't even read. Don't do that. Just buy the books that you really want to read in the moment, but don't buy books that you think you will read sometime in the future, like a year from now. Don't do that because you never know a year from now if you want to read them. So about that, I wouldn't say that I have done that when it comes to fantasy books, because that was kind of the thing that I targeted with this goal. I have found that when I usually buy fantasy books and I buy the whole set of like every single, if it's a trilogy for example, and I buy every single book in the trilogy and I like the first book but I don't love it, even if I love the book, I usually don't tend to pick up the sequel right away. I tend to read other books, even though I love one book. I tend to pick up other ones. This was kind of pointed towards that habit of mine when it came to like fantasy novels and fantasy sequels. So I haven't bought very much fantasy this year. Like at all. I don't think I have bought any fantasy books. Maybe that's a lie, but other books when it comes to like sequels, I have bought them when it comes to romance, for example. Here we have Ice Planet Barbarian by Ruby Dixon, or the series, and this is the third, fourth and fifth book, and I haven't read any of these. And as soon as I saw that Ice Planet Barbarian prize, that you could buy that in the special edition, I knew that I needed to buy it. So I bought that even though I haven't read the third novel or the fourth. But I mean, they are so beautiful on my shelf, so I needed to buy them. Still stand by the point that I made in the video that I should not be reading books that I don't think I will enjoy, or especially for fantasy books. If I don't like the first one or haven't read the first one, I should not be buying the second one or the third one or the fourth, because recently I have not found many fantasy books that I like or love, and so I don't want to make that commitment, you know, in a series. So now that we have gone through the goals, I might add that my goals haven't really shifted. I still want to read more of my physical books on my TBR, but now I want to add a goal, and that's that I want to read more books borrowed from the library. And I think libraries are so important, so that's a new goal that I have. But let's go through all the books that I read in the span of 6 months in 2023. And the first book that I finished was in January, and that was A Portrait of a Scotsman by E.V. Dunmore. And I gave the book 4 stars. This is the third book in the League of Extraordinary Women series by E.V. Dunmore, and it was so much fun. It's Grumpy Sunshine. The male character is Scottish and he's a very like big burly character and very grumpy, which I liked a lot. My main complaint was that there was a little bit too many technical terms, and I have had this problem with all of her books. There's too many technical things and too many political things in her books, because I tend to love those period books or historical books where it's just fluffy and fun and like they go to a lot of balls. So that's my whole idea of that, but I still gave it 4 stars because the Grumpy Sunshine was everything, and it was very sexy and steamy, and the tension, it was very angsty in a very good way. And then I read The Ballad of Never After by Stephanie Garber, the second book from Evangeline Fox's point of view, and the story with Jax as well. And I gave the book 5 stars because it was so freaking good, and I can't wait for the third book to be out in the world. I think it's later this year, so I will definitely be buying that and reading that, and it was so good. It's so whimsical, magical, just like Stephanie Garber's Caraval series, and I don't think I gave that series many like stars. I think I gave some of them 3 stars even, but looking back on those books, I want to reread them. Like, I think so fondly of them and her authorship, and like the way that she writes fantasy books. It's just so magical and whimsical, fairy tale like. And then I read The Governess Game by Tessa Dare, and I gave the book 5 stars. It's the second book in her Girl Meets Duke series, and one of my favorites in the series. I have read 3 of them, and the second and the third were my favorites. But this follows the typical rake, and he has been forced to take care of 2 of his nieces, I think, and he doesn't like this position. He wants to send them off to like boarding school or school somewhere, and he also has trouble finding a governess to take care of them, because the 2 children tend to scare away every single governess that they have. The female character is going to the Duke's house to I don't know, arrange his clocks or check on his clocks, but he thinks that she's there for the position of the governess, so he hires her as the governess. And so they make this kind of deal that she gets to live in his house and take care of his kids, and she also gets money out of it because I think there was some kind of motivation in the beginning why she needed the money. And she also lost her instrument for you know, fixing the clocks, so she couldn't work as that anymore, which all fits perfectly for the love story that we get to read about. So 5 stars, loved it. This series, Girl Meets Duke, is so much spicier and steamier than, for example, The League of Extraordinary Women by Evie Dunmore. But then I read Ice Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon and gave it 4 stars. And when we talk about spice, this is a spicy book. It's alien romance, alien spice, and the first book was actually really interesting, and I found to be liking like the fantasy or the sci-fi elements of this world and how they got there. In the beginning of the book, our main character and a lot of other women have been abducted by aliens from Earth, and it's hell on that ship, and it's very heartbreaking in the beginning, but they quickly find themselves on this not Hoth planet. It's an ice planet, and there are Ice Planet Barbarians on the planet as well. So the first book I gave 4 stars because I really liked their relationship, and I don't judge me for it, okay? Then I read The Wallflower Wager, also a Girl Meets Duke book by Tessa Dare, and I gave the book 5 stars. It was Grumpy Sunshine at its best. This Grumpy Sunshine dynamic and these 2 characters in this one was better than The Portrait of a Scotsman, because that was a little bit too angsty for me and too real. Some of the descriptions in the book kind of felt like history lessons, and I don't like that when reading. So The Wallflower Wager was what I was missing, I guess, in that book. It was so much fun. The female character, she took care of animals, and she was kind of a bit crazy, I might say, but she was such a fun character. Male character, so grumpy, and I think he was called like the Duke of Ruin because he was ruining a lot of wealthy people. But I gave the book 5 stars, and then I also read another romance, which was Take a Hint, Danny Brown by Talia Hibbert. Gave the book 3 stars, and I really liked the male character of this book, but I didn't really like Danny, so I think that's my problem with this. It was still a good book, but I gave it 3 stars, and I think Get a Life Chloe Brown was better. Then I read Barbarian Alien by Ruby Dixon, gave it 4 stars, not as good as the first one, because I kind of felt like the male character in this one was a little bit much of a brute. He kidnaps his mate right after she has like gotten her parasite that gets her to be living at this planet. Maybe that's a spoiler if you haven't read the first book. I'm sorry for this. But I don't think you will be reading this for the plot, honestly. He was a bit too overprotective, and the fact that he kidnaps her, that didn't really sit right with me. But I still gave it 4 stars, so I mean, it was steamy, it was good. I liked the relationship building, like when they were at this cave together, just the 2 of them. So the first couple of chapters was a little bit rough, but she was angry at him, and it was kind of a hate or enemies to lovers kind of situation, and I liked that part. But then I read finally The Duke and I by Julia Quinn, the first Bridgerton book. I have, like many others, watched the Netflix series, and I did that before even reading the books, but I gave this book 3 stars because I'm voicing the same concerns as many of the other viewers and readers of this book and the TV series have voiced before. There was a certain plot point in the book and this TV series which is very questionable, and because of that I gave the book 3 stars. After I read this, I wanted to rewatch the Netflix series, and I couldn't really get past the 4th episode or something, 5th episode, because I knew that we were coming up to that point in the book, and I didn't want to read that. And then I read The Chase, a book in the Briar University series by Elle Kennedy, gave the book 4 stars. These books, I think, are so much fun. They are steamy sports romances set in college or university, and it's just a fun time. There's a lot of stereotypes in these books, but I felt like in this one Elle Kennedy went completely unstereotypical with the characters. One of the hockey players, he was a gamer, he was developing a game, and the female character, she was majoring in like fashion, and she has, I think, ADHD, so it was a representation of that as well. So I gave the book 4 stars because it wasn't better than any of the other books, but it was still an enjoyable read. Then I read my first ever manga, which was Spy X Family Volume 1. I gave the book 4 stars. I laughed out loud, honestly, when I read this book, and the illustrations were very beautiful, and it was a good manga, and I can't really compare it to anything else, so for me it was good. And then I read These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, and I gave the book 4 stars. It took me a while to finish this book, but I actually found that every single night when I was reading the book, I really enjoyed it. It was slow paced, it was inspired by Romeo and Juliet, and that relationship was very angsty, and I couldn't wait to see them be together and kind of cooperate, even though they had this much history and they were so hurt by each other. It follows two gang rivals in Shanghai, in like historical Shanghai. I can't really remember when, it was the 1920s, and I follow her on like Instagram, on TikTok, and I find like Chloe Gong as the person and the author so inspiring, so I was so glad that the book wasn't disappointing. We're gonna talk about The Viscount Who Loved Me by Julia Quinn. I gave it 4 stars because I liked it better than the first one, and I liked that in this book, spoiler alert, Anthony do not almost marry Kate's sister. It's not a part of the book. But then I read a Swedish romance novel that's called Allt att vinna, and it's by Sofia Fritzson. Gave it 4 stars, and it was definitely a plus that it had spicy scenes, because I hadn't read any like romance novels, like Swedish traditionally published romance novels that had that in the books. And then I read, I know what it's called in Swedish, but I can't remember the name of it in English, but it's another manga, and it's Lyckans knappnål, and it's by Hisai Iwauka. I'm sorry for the pronunciation on that, but I gave it 3 stars. It was a 1 standalone graphic novel or manga. I didn't really like it because it was too fluffy for me, and the translation from, I guess, Japanese to Swedish or Japanese to English to Swedish was so bad that I couldn't really get into enjoying the book. But then I read, or actually listened to, An Offer from a Gentleman, which is the 3rd Bridgerton book, and it's from Benedict's point of view, and I gave the book 4 stars. I liked it better than The Viscount Who Loved Me, because I feel like that has been the case for every book so far. I liked it better than the last. It was a Cinderella retelling, and I've heard people say that it was bad because of the Cinderella retelling, but I couldn't see that. I really liked the Cinderella aspect of it. Then I read Spy X Family Volume 2, and I didn't mention the author, Tatsuya Endo, that has written the Spy X Family volumes, and I gave it 4 stars. This was as fun as the first one, and I have no complaints. Then I read my first, I think, 5-star read. Was it my first 5-star? No. It wasn't, but it was my first 5-star in quite a while, and that was Defy the Night by Bridget Kemmerer. This is a YA fantasy, and I have not found, except for Stephanie Garber's books, a good YA fantasy in a while. It was friends to lovers to enemies to friends to lovers. It was so angsty, so good. If you haven't read it, please do, and we can talk about it in the comments. And then I read Twisted Games by Anna Huang, the 2nd book in the Twisted series, and I gave the book 4 stars. It is a bodyguard princess book, which was her first book in that kind of trope, and I liked it so much. It was an age gap as well between the princess, which was Bridget, and Reese Larson, which was the bodyguard, and it was so good, but sometimes the steamy scenes were a bit over the top for me. Then I read Mysteries of Thorn Manor by Margaret Rogerson, and this is the sequel novella to Sorcery of Thorns, and that was a book that I gave 5 stars, but I gave this book 2 stars, and honestly, it could have gotten a 1 star, but I am way too nice, and I gave it 2 stars, because I couldn't understand, for the first half of this book, I couldn't understand why this novella was needed. It was fan service, there was no point in it, because they were stuck at this mansion and they were finding out things about the history of the mansion, and I didn't care about that. The characters that I had grown to love, that was what I cared about, and I couldn't see them in the first half. And then in the second half, it got way better, because it began like talking about Nathaniel and Elizabeth's romance and how that was progressing after the novel. And so that was good, but I gave it 2 stars. But then I read How to Be a Wallflower by Eloisa James, and I gave the book 4 stars. I read it in the Swedish translation, and why it didn't get 5 stars is because of the actual translation and the many typos that I found in the book. The actual romance and the character descriptions and like the feeling was the same that I get when I listen to like Julia Quinn books or other historical novels that I loved, but because of the fact that there were so many typos, I couldn't give it 5 stars. 4 stars it is. That is still a good rating, especially when you think about how many typos there were. Then I read the 2nd book in the Briar University series by Elle Kennedy, and that's The Risk, and I gave it 4 stars. I do think I enjoyed this better than the first one, because I liked the characters of this one better, and it's very enemies to lovers, forbidden romance. Their female character, her dad is the coach for the Briar University hockey team, and then Jake, which is the male character, he is the star player at a different university. The coaches butt heads and they hate each other, and of course it was a fun, steamy hockey romance. And then the last book that I have read when I am filming this video is a Swedish book by an author that's called Veronica Almér, and the title is Blått blod, rött hjärta, and I gave the book 5 stars. It feels so good to end this off on a positive note, because I freaking love this book. It was so like chaotic, because the female character of this book was chaos. The male character, who is the like fictive crown prince, there's a fictive royal family. We have a royal family in Sweden, but it was a made-up one for this book, and he was a crown prince and he was a party prince. And then we follow the female character, who is also very crazy. She likes to party a lot and she has a past that she really wants to hide and fight. They begin this, it's only like a physical relationship in the beginning. They start to build feelings towards each other. I like this kind of fun comedic thing that I often find in, like, for example, Al Kennedy books. They don't take themselves too seriously, and this was one of those books as well, and I just found it really fun, fast-paced, and the ending was so like over the top, but I really liked the ending. So I gave this book 5 stars. Like, I couldn't give it any less. Honestly, it was so good. That was all the 22 books that I have read so far, and I have DNF'd 2 books this year, which is a new thing for me. I DNF'd The Iron Wolf by C.D. Pettersen, and I also DNF'd For Now Dansar I mörkret av Helene Holmström. But DNFing is a new thing for me, and I feel like it's time. It's finally time, and I feel like this is so crooked. I'm really sorry. So that said, thank you so much for watching this very long video. I hope that you enjoyed it. For next week's video, I will talk about my writing goals, what I have accomplished in the last 6 months, and what my goals are for the upcoming months. Leave a like and a comment below and let me know what books you have read in the last couple of months. Have you any favorites? Are you reading at all, or are you taking a like reading break? Maybe you're in a reading slump, because I have been in so many reading slumps this year. And don't forget to subscribe, because I post a new video every week, every Thursday, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!